If you have a permanently altered joint, listen up. There are some very specific things you should be doing throughout your week to make sure that joint stays healthy. And on this week's episode of the Exercises Health Podcast is exactly what we're going to be discussing. We're going to cue our introduction and dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercises Health Podcast, brought to you by Muscle Activation Schaumburg. We're your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we're discussing this idea of how do you keep a permanently altered joint healthy? Meaning your joint has been replaced or there is some structural change to it that doesn't seem like it's going back to the way it was. Maybe it's arthritis or something going on with the cartilage of the knee, or something going on with a labrum, around the hip or around the shoulder. There's something going on structurally with the joint where it's like, okay, yeah, this has been permanently changed. How do we make sure that joint stays healthy? That's exactly what we want to talk with you about today. And we want to let you know that if you want to start taking action on what we're discussing and you would like our guidance, that's exactly what we can help you with at our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, where we specialize in muscle activation techniques. All you need to do to see our availability and get on our schedule is go to our website, www.matschaumburg.com. Click the big green button that says Get Started, and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. So this idea of permanently altered joints. Now, a lot of times when we think of permanently altered joints, we're going straight to like a joint replacement. But actually this conversation is going to encompass a lot more than just strictly a joint replacement. However, if you do have a joint replacement, whether it's your knee, your hip, your shoulder, or some other joint, this conversation is still pertinent to you because there are still things that you need to make sure you are doing to keep the joint and the surrounding area healthy. And that's exactly what we're going to unveil for you during this conversation.
That's right. And I even want to jump in and say this also applies to bulging discs. I know like a disc point. Is not technically a joint, but it does highly affect how the joints are moving in that area. So any permanent changes, again, like Charlie was saying, things like bone spurs, arthritis, changes in the soft tissue around it that aren't muscle, like cartilage or labrum, or maybe you've had a joint surgery that's not a joint replacement, like something that's pinned or something that has been like mended back together. So these are permanent joint changes, and there is so much that the muscles can do that we're going to talk to you about to make this area feel and function so much better and be healthier. But the thing you have to drop, the narrative that we always ask our clients to drop is that, well, I have a bulging disc, so my back is just going to be like this. Oh, I have a bunion, so of course my foot is just going to be like this. I have a pin in my, finger or my toe, and so of course I'm just going to be like this. Just because you have a permanent change to your joint does not mean like permanent detriment or like there's no options, right? There's a lot that we can do to our bodies and to our muscles that will really enhance the situation and the environment in the area. And honestly, a lot of us have permanent joint changes that we don't even know about. And so this really applies to all of us. And if you take this approach, you're going to notice that not only are you feeling better, you're moving better. I actually just had a story last week where a woman, she had a pin put in her toe. And so she can't like extend her toe. So if you think about walking, she can't like walk over her big toe. But after one session of our MAT session together, she's like, I know my toe is still pinned, but like for some reason I can like use my toe better and I'm walking better and straighter. And it's just amazing the amount of change that can happen if you actually do these steps and you drop the narrative of I have X, Y, and Z going on in my knee or hip or toe or back or whatever it is for you. And so it's just going to be like this because it's not just going to be like this.
Exactly, Julie. I love that you brought that up and you're kicking it off with this idea of we need to drop this narrative because you're right. It is a very prevalent narrative and it's a very easy narrative to buy into, especially if we are approaching it from the idea of, well, my structure is permanently this way, which means it can't change, which means therefore there's nothing I can do about it. And what we're saying is, hold up, pump the brakes on that story because there's actually a lot that you can do about it. And the other thing that what we're going to discuss actually does to that narrative is it pokes a lot of holes in the belief that I'm feeling this way because my structure is this way. All right, I'm feeling this pain, I'm feeling this tightness, I'm feeling this symptom because my structure is this way. And because my structure can't change, that means I'm always going to feel this pain, this tightness, and this symptom. And what we're saying is those two are not related, okay? There's a lot that you can do around the structure that's not changing that can highly influence how you are feeling symptomatically. And like you are alluding to, Julie, it has to do with your muscles, the strength of your muscles, and how well your muscles are functioning.
Charlie, you're totally right. So let's jump into the first thing that you need to be doing around any permanently changed or modified joint in your body, and that is to be strengthening and using it regularly, but respecting your full pain-free range of motion. So if you're familiar with our Exercise for Life principles, this is step number 1, but this extra applies when you have something going on in a joint that makes it not very perfect, right? So let's say you have a bulging disc. That's like a permanent change, in your spine. So you need to be strengthening the muscles that surround your spine, but make sure you're using your full pain-free range of motion. And that might look different than what it used to be. Or it might look different now that you're in your 60s with a bulging disc than when you were in your 20s. And actually often it does look different, right? So the first thing that you need to be doing is making sure you are keeping the area strong, and but also being mindful of the appropriate range of motion, not using like full max as far as I can possibly pull myself, but it's like full pain-free range of motion. One of the biggest reasons why people start to have negative health effects from permanently modified joints is not just because the joint has been permanently modified. It's actually because you stopped using the muscles that are supposed to be keeping this joint healthy. And so if we do have a permanently modified joint, then just by adding in those the healthy steps to keep muscles healthy, by keeping them conditioned, to keeping them with good endurance, to keeping them with power and strength, and actually using the joint, it will greatly improve the joint and its state, not even having to change the structure of the joint. So make sure you are keeping each area with a modified joint structure really strong and healthy, and you're using your full but pain-free, symptom-free range of motion.
Yeah, this is a really big point with this discussion. And the reason is for two key reasons. Number one is that when you have a permanently altered joint, one of the easiest ways for your body to tell you that something is not agreeing with that joint is to give you pain, okay? Is to send pain signals in that area or in areas kind of surrounding where the permanently altered joint is. And so when you are using and respecting your symptom-free range of motion, it's of the utmost importance that you're staying in the area that doesn't have that pain, so you aren't further degrading the joint or you aren't unnecessarily stressing the joint. Now, like Julie said, this is principle number 1 of our 4 Exercise for Life principles. So this applies across the board. But when we're talking like a permanently altered joint, we want to make sure that we're not going to be doing anything to it to make it worse. And so with that, respecting your range of motion is a really, really big thing. The second point to this is when you respect your range of motion and you are staying within your symptom-free range of motion, oftentimes your body will give you more range of motion even when the joint is permanently altered. Again, going back to the idea that was brought up earlier of the structure that you have is not necessarily indicative or the thing that is driving the symptoms that you have, okay? By using your symptom-free range of motion, you didn't change the structure at all, okay? But you say, okay, I'm just going to do exercise in an area that doesn't bother the structure, that doesn't have any associated symptoms with, and that's as much motion as I'm going to use. And you may see that over the course of the set, over the course of the workout, over the course of 1 week to the next, your body starts giving you more range of motion. It's not because the altered joint changed. It's because of all the other stuff that you're affecting when you exercise, okay? And all that other stuff is going to have a tremendous influence over the symptoms that you may be experiencing because of the permanently altered joint. However, when you go and stay within your symptom-free range of motion, not only are you not going to be aggravating the permanently altered joint, but you will also be encouraging your body that you are building strength within the amount of motion that's appropriate for you. And as a result, you may see that you start getting more range of motion.
You know what? The biggest limit to people actually doing this, Charlie, is their own bias about what exercise should look like.
Mm-hmm.
You know how many people like come in here and they've sprained a knee, or like there's something that's healing, or they've had a knee replacement, and like, oh, okay, so great. If we apply this first principle, then we should go strengthen the muscles of the knee, right? That's what you're saying, Julie and Charlie. But I should also respect my range of motion. But I only have like the first half, and then it's always like first half of range, right? So if you think about like knee bending or knee straightening, like a knee flexion or knee extension machine at the gym, like what if you could only do the first half, literally 50% of the exercise? Most people would then follow it up with, and so like, am I even doing anything? Or like, how gratifying is that? And I'm like, well, the only input that's telling you that is it even doing anything is that you think you should go full range. But to your body, 50% of the range that you were expecting is its 100%. And so the best thing that you can do is do your 100%, which might not externally look like 100%, but it's your body's current 100%. And that is the best way that you're going to have predictable strength changes in your body. So make sure that you are removing your own like emotional mental bias of what this thing should look like, and just listen to your body. Like stop having the preconceived idea of like comforting of like layering over your workout, and just being like, hey, I'm just here to see what my body can do today, and that's it. I've came to strengthen my body. That's what I'm going to do. So make sure you remove that so that you actually can participate in step one, and take out your own bias of like what the workout should look like.
Exactly. Step number 2 now is to prioritize building the strength around that joint and around the joints that surround that joint. For example, if you have a permanently altered knee, okay, you want to make sure that not only are you strengthening the muscles that are right around your knee, such as your quadriceps and hamstrings and your gastrocs, you also want to make sure that you are strengthening the muscles that are around the joints that are right next to the knees, such as your ankles and your hips. This means that you should be prioritizing doing exercises to strengthen your feet and ankles. You should be prioritizing doing exercises that strengthen all the different muscles of your hips. And so you can carry this logic into any joint within your body, any synovial joint within your body where there may be permanently altered, and the logic still holds true. Yes, we need to build strength around that joint specifically, but we also need to make sure that we are building strength around the joints that are immediately next to it. Reason being is because when there is a permanently altered joint, that is going to oftentimes affect how that joint moves, okay? And when a joint doesn't move as well as it was initially designed, your body needs to figure out a way to compensate, to create more motion, not at that joint, because it can't come from that joint, but somewhere else throughout the body. And the easiest place for that motion to take place, more times than not, is through joints that are directly adjacent to the joint that's been permanently altered, like right next to, above, below, something like that, okay? And so when you're thinking about your workouts, yes, you want to stay within your symptom-free range of motion when you're doing the exercises for that joint and for all joints of your body. And you need to make sure that you are prioritizing building the strength, not only of around that joint, but the muscles that are around the joints that are immediately next to it.
Yeah, this is going to make a huge change on how it feels to like have the function of that permanently modified joint. Because your body, it works like as a unit, like it works all together. And so like if you're going to walk, your body's still going to walk, whether you have a bulging disc in your back or not, whether you have a knee replaced or not, whether you have a scoliosis or not, right? And so you're going to find ways. Your body's so smart. It's going to find ways to compensate, which we actually want it to do, right? It like can take stress off of a joint that can't handle more stress, but that also places more stress on other joints. And so by strength training these like next to joints, adjacent joints, then what happens is that those joints and muscles get stronger. They become more resilient. They become more able to handle more. It really helps that permanently modified joint, but it also helps your system as a whole handle having some of these joints that aren't working as well as they once did, and to be able to, keep functioning with less and less symptoms and to keep that area as healthy as possible.
Absolutely. Now, step number 3 in this process is to make sure you keep your muscles functioning well with muscle activation techniques. We need to make sure that you're strengthening them using traditional strength training and exercise. However, we also need to make sure that your brain and your muscles are talking to each other and that communication between the brain and the muscles is strong. Because when that starts to break down, your muscles will start to lose strength, your joints will start to lose range of motion, you will start to lose stability, and your body won't be able to protect your joints as well, which when we're talking about a permanently altered joint is a huge issue because we need to make sure that this joint structurally is not as sound as it was originally designed. And so now we need to make sure that the muscles are really doing their job to protect that joint. However, if there is that breakdown in communication between your brain and your muscles, the brain and muscles aren't talking as well as they should, that is going to affect how well your muscles can protect your joints, how well your muscles can work. And so the remedy to all that is muscle activation techniques. MAT, the process of muscle activation techniques, is specifically designed to identify where within your body you're having these breakdowns in communication between your brain and your muscles. And as a result, your muscles are tightening up, your muscles aren't contracting well, your body is feeling achier than normal, you're not recovering as well as you would from workouts or from daily life, and it's all due to muscle inhibition. It's all due to this breakdown in communication between your brain and your muscles. And so instead of trying to stretch the tightness away, what we actually need to do is activate the inhibition away. And that's exactly what we do with muscle activation techniques.
Yeah, this one is so huge, especially for those of you that are like, well, I do believe I can strengthen my knee after knee replacement. And I'm doing all these rehab exercises, but a lot of people feel like they hit a ceiling or something's just not right? But what happens a lot of times is that there's all these inhibited muscles around the knee or around, whatever area is applicable to you. And so because of that, it's really hard to strengthen those muscles. In fact, those muscles can't be strengthened because they're basically like sleeping turned off muscles. And so it's important that you say, hey, let me get the muscles turned back on and then let me strengthen on top of that. This is especially important for you guys when you're tuning in thinking, I do have a permanently altered joint, whether that's from a surgery, whether that's from something that's been building, it's chronic over time, whether that's I have a torn ligament in my knee and just never got it repaired, right? And so we're working with this modified structure. That means that there is some level of either trauma in the area or inflammation. And that kind of situation really encourages muscle inhibition to grow and to love living there. And so by getting muscle activation techniques, we see within sessions inflammation change and we see muscles get turned on immediately. And because of that, people can then go with a more supported joint and actually get the benefits that they were hoping to get from their strength training or their rehab type sessions.
So having a permanently altered joint is not a sentence that says you can never have, a symptom-free area of your body. It's not a sentence that says, oh, you can't be as active as you once were. You can still be active. You can still feel really good. You can still feel fit and strong and mobile and all the things that you want to feel. But you need to make sure that you are doing things to keep the permanently altered joint healthy. And the way that we recommend you doing that is, one, when you're exercising, respecting using your symptom-free range of motion. Don't exceed it. Stay within your symptom-free range of motion. Number two, prioritize strengthening not only the muscles that immediately surround that joint, but the muscles that are at joints right next to the one that is permanently altered. And that way, as your body tries to compensate for the structurally altered joint, you will be able to withstand the extra stress that is going through those muscles and going through those joints because your muscles are strong. And number three, make sure that you are getting muscle activation techniques. Again, not just for the area that has the permanent alterations, but for the areas that are immediately next to and kind of further out throughout your body as well, to make sure that your brain and your muscles stay talking to each other, that your muscles can continue working as they're supposed to, and that your joints throughout your entire body can be supported and moving well. And so if you would like our help with this process, especially muscle activation techniques, that's exactly what we can help you with at our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg. All you need to do to see our availability and get on our schedule is go to our website, www.matschaumburg.com. Click the big green button that says Get Started, and you can schedule yourself for your initial MAT consultation and assessment. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We always appreciate your attention, whether it's your eyes on YouTube, whether it's your ears on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to us or consume our content. If you wouldn't mind, share this with somebody who needs to hear this message, who has a permanently altered joint and is wondering, is this just how it's going to be for the rest of forever? Share this with them so they can understand the importance of keeping the joint and the muscles that surround the joint strong and healthy. If you wouldn't mind leaving us a rating and review on whatever platform you listen to us on, it really means the world to us. Well, we are wishing you a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.
This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.